Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start off today's evenings. This is the May FedRAC meeting. Today, I have Council President Linda Kochmar, and I also have Council Member Jack Walsh, Council Member Susan Honda. I would like to let everybody know that Councilmember Tran is excused and Councilmember Dovey is attempting to log in via Zoom at the moment.
And I'm also here.
Oh, and Councilmember Lydia is joining us via Zoom.
Thank you.
He's on? Okay. So we'll start off. Is there any public comments tonight?
There are no public comments.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to community business. First item of business tonight is approval of the summary minutes from April 2024. Councilmember Dovey, are you on?
Okay. Chair, I move approval of the minutes.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. All those are,
I'm sorry, just as a matter of procedure, Mr. Dovey's online. Is he voting or is he participating?
He's supposed to vote, but he's having difficulties, so he's not able to speak.
Okay.
He's online. He's showing that he's online.
Can't be online unless he can vote. So I'm just trying to figure out if President Kochmar needs to be a participating member or not. Councilmember Dovey, are you trying to speak? Looks like he's there.
He doesn't have a mic.
Okay. Guess he will not be participating.
not participating.
Hey, Councilmember Dovey, just butt in at any time if you are able.
Since Councilmember Dovey is unable to vote right now, President Kochmar will be taking the lead on that one then. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So I believe we have a motion then? Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? Looks good. Everybody in favor, say yay. Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Yay.
That's new.
Aye. Thank you. Sorry. Aye.
That's okay. We're close.
The ayes have it, 2-0. So the next topic is topic B, ordinance, limited tax general obligation bond. Director Groom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The item before you is a bond ordinance. It's a debt issue. I will be introducing shortly Duncan Brown, who is our municipal advisor, and Bill Tonkin, who is our bond counsel. And I have a little bit of introductory material, and then the importance of them being here is so that they can explain the technical aspects that they are specialists in. From a policy level, it's important that we make sure that the debt that we're issuing doesn't last as long as the life of the asset. So we need to make sure that the asset that it's paying for, just like you don't want to have a car come to the end of its life and you're still making payments on it. That's one of the policy level things that we want to think about. Also, one of the purposes of issuing debt is so that the cost of the asset, the cost of the public infrastructure, is actually paid for by the people who are using it, the citizens and the taxpayers. And so by spreading it over 20, 25, 30 years, the cost is actually borne by the people that are actually getting the benefit of it. We also want to make sure that we're well within our legal debt limit, and I think every time you see our audited financials, we are only using 1/10 of the legal debt limit. That's not an issue, but the more limiting factor is always within whether the debt service itself is within our foreseeable budget. As a process, we've been talking about this, we've been planning on this since January. We started working on bond documents in April, and tonight we have the bond ordinance coming to FedRAC. It will continue to the next two council meetings for first and second hearing in June. The bid opening for the construction cost itself happens June 25th. We'll be conducting a credit rating presentation in July, and then we expect the bond issue closing to be in August. That's when we would receive the funds. Now, we have a much more detailed timeline that we have been following, and I don't think it's important to go through it line by line. All I want you to know is that we have been fairly detailed in the process that we've been doing, starting from the very beginning. We've been meeting with our financial advisor, our bond counsel. We've also been having internal meetings with Public Works and with our city administrator and the mayor. Most recently, I believe it was the March Land Use Transportation Committee meeting that you would have most recently got the most recent estimates. I think this was the 85% design cost estimate. The only thing that I have that is different is there's $4 million that has been paid or will be paid prior to the bond issue. We did a reimbursement ordinance to cover the cost of the property acquisition prior to the debt issue, but not design costs. In principle, we want to make sure that the debt issue has the smallest principal possible. We don't know the exact prevailing rates. However, rates haven't changed all that much. There is fluctuation, of course, the market being what it is. It changes from time to time, and I believe Duncan will speak a little bit more to that. And we are anticipating a 25-year debt issue, although if the costs come over the budget that we're expecting, the bond ordinance builds in flexibility so that we could go 30 years if we wanted to. This is the amortization schedule that shows the payments for over 25 years. The initial debt service would be $2.7 million. And what I have circled or sort of outlined in red, I think we've seen this multiple times where we're going to have about $1 million paid by the Surface Water Enterprise Fund. We're going to have initially $1 million come out of real estate excise tax. We're going to have some savings from fuel dispensing and maintenance. And then the general fund would bear the rest. And so at the current estimate, we think that the general fund's share of the cost will be starting at $400,000. Real estate excise tax, of course, bumps up in later years as other debt issues get fully paid off and then more REIT becomes available to be directed at this debt issue. I have a simple quote here. Your auto loan doesn't pay for your car, your paycheck does. So when we issue debt, the debt itself isn't paying for the facility. And when we go and we sell this to the market, the bankers are going to require proof, and where is the money going to come from? And this is where we need to know our city. We need to look at our sales tax revenue. Historically, we have a very strong underlying economy. I have got the past several years leading up to 2023 with the actual numbers below. 2024, we have an estimate, and I am just using a 4% forecast to be cautious at the moment. Do we think this is reasonable? Well, we think that this is, based on the past, this would be very cautious. So this is, we're trying to build in some caution so that we want to under-promise, over-deliver. We want to make sure that we've built an ability to pay our debt by cautious budgeting. Property tax revenue, as you know, the top graph is the assessed value. That's the value of the city, and it went down this last year from 17 billion to 14 billion. That was the only time it's ever taken a step backward. Other than that, it's been always a healthy increase. The tax levy itself in the green below has been extremely stable, and that's because it always goes up 1%, except for new construction, which can go up in the amount that the new construction is valued at. The real estate excise tax, because it bears such an integral role to the repayment of the debt that we're looking at, we want to look at that and talk about that just a little bit more. In 2023 and in the current year, 2024, we've seen that the revenue has gone down. We're pretty sure that that's because the mortgage rates out in the market have gone up. Now, we know our assessed value has been stable, so it's just the pace of the transactions that has reduced the amount of the REIT tax revenue coming to us. So we need to have a little bit of a game plan for that. What if it takes a couple years for it to recover? Well, one thing we could do is we could use surface water. We have fund balance on hand for our surface water utility that it's been saving up, planning to be spent on the operations and maintenance facility. It could have been spent to bring down the entire principal amount so we could issue a smaller amount of debt. Under the current circumstances, we think it's just wise, we think it's just prudent to be able to keep that fund balance in case we want to spend it in the next couple of years. It's got over $7 million in the capital fund. and the operations fund is also similarly healthy. And what we all wonder is, if we look at the recovery that lodging tax did back when it was going through the pandemic, what does lodging tax have to do with REIT or anything else? It has to do with our local economy. How well do we know our own city? When we have setbacks, do we recover? Do we think that the local commerce, the sales tax is going to bounce back? Do we think the REIT is going to bounce back? So our first game plan is to hold back surface water fund balance. The other part is surface water revenue on an ongoing basis. Has it been predictable? Has it been strong? And it has. Here again, it's been predictable and consistent. So we think that we can show our creditors that in the future, we think we have a high degree of confidence that surface water will be able to pay for its debt service for the long term. And as always, we look at the strength and stability of our overall cash position. This is a graph that we look at every single month, and the last month had a little upturn. That's just because property tax was coming in. As you know, we've been increasing our long-term investments. We've been decreasing our liquidity, and we still have $28 million of liquidity with a target balance of 20. So we're keeping a healthy amount of liquidity as well. So all of that is the background that I'm sharing with you that I would be sharing with our credit rating call. Bill, if I could invite you to explain your role? Sure. You're part of the team? Thank you. I'll be back after they're through.
Thank you, Steve, and nice to be here with the council members tonight. I'm with Foster Garvey, and Stacy Amasaki and I are the lawyers in Foster Garvey currently serving as bond counsel to the city, and our firm has been honored to serve the city for many decades as bond counsel, I believe. I can say a few things about our role. Some of you have been through this drill before, so probably some of it may not be new. And then I'll talk a little bit, highlight some of the substantive points that are in the bond ordinance that the council will ultimately be passing. So as bond counsel, we have three main responsibilities for the city. First, we review the city's compliance with whatever laws are applicable to issue the bonds that you plan to issue for financing capital projects like your new maintenance facility. We draft the bond ordinance that authorizes the sale and issuance of the bonds. And then we provide our legal opinion that the bonds are legal, valid, and binding obligations of the city. We also, the second main thing that we do as bond counsel, we work with the city to review the nature of the capital projects that are being financed and the expected schedule for, oops, I'm forgetting to turn my slides here, I guess. Sorry about that. So I was just saying that the second thing that we do as bond counsel is review the tax requirements under federal tax law that are applicable so that we can provide our opinion that interest on the bonds is exempt from federal income tax when the bond holders receive the interest. And then back up. The third thing that we do is when requested, we serve as disclosure counsel for the city and draft the official statement that describes the city and the nature of the bonds and the pledges for the bonds. And we are serving as disclosure counsel for this issue of bonds as well. The bond ordinance itself basically authorizes the city to issue non-voter approved limited tax general obligation bonds to finance the maintenance and operations facility. And to secure payment of the bonds, the city pledges to levy taxes within the constitutional and statutory limits that are provided by law without a vote of the electors. That'll be sufficient, together with other money that's available and to be used to pay the debt service on the bonds, to pay all of the bonds when they're due. The bond ordinance pledges the full faith and credit of the city for payment of the bonds, and that these pledges means that the bonds count against the city's debt limit, but as Steve mentioned in his initial remarks, the city has ample debt capacity and the bonds are well within the city's debt capacity. Under state law, in order to provide flexibility to bond issuers and efficiency for the process of issuing bonds, the state law allows the city to delegate authority to a designated representative of the city to determine the final terms of the bonds and accept offers to purchase the bonds, so long as the terms of the bonds are within parameters that are provided and approved by the city council in the bond ordinance. Keep forgetting to keep mine moving here. So in this case, the bond ordinance designates the finance director, or in his absence, the deputy finance director, mayor, or mayor's designee, as the city's designated representative to approve the final terms of the bonds. And in section 4 of the bond ordinance, the council does set forth parameters for the final terms of the bonds within which the bond sale must comply. And these parameters, I should mention, are designed to be flexible, so they don't necessarily state the specific terms, but they, for an example, the terms of the size of the bond issue of not more than $57 million in principal amount, that's intended to be a maximum, and I think Steve and Duncan Brown will comment that it's likely that the actual principal amount will be less than 57 million. The other key parameter is that, again, no rate of interest shall exceed 7%. Again, that's a maximum. It is, at this point, I'm not a financial person, but at this point, it's unlikely that the interest rate would be as high as 7%. Another key parameter is that true interest cost cannot exceed 5.5%. And then the price of the whole bond issue is to be within 98% of the par amount of the bonds and not more than 135% of the par amount of the bonds, which would mean potentially selling the bonds at some original issue premium, which, you know, Duncan can explain more if there are questions about that. And finally, the final maturity date of the bonds is specified, or would be specified in the ordinance, as not later than December 31 of 2054, which, as Steve mentioned, that's with an additional potential 5 years in the event that for some reason the bond issue needs to be out over a longer period of time. Some of the key, there are various covenants in the ordinance, but the key covenants that I'd like to mention are, number one, the city covenants to comply with federal tax law with respect to the use of the facility after the bonds are issued, to make sure that interest on the bonds continues to be tax exempt when received by the owners of the bonds. In addition, another key covenant is that the city will undertake, as it has on other publicly offered bond issues in the past, to provide continuing disclosure to the municipal bond market about the city and about the bonds. The information provided to the bond market about the city will consist essentially of annual financial information about the city, and then certain notices of certain events that would affect the bonds if they occur. These would include things like optional redemption of the bonds or a change in rating of the bonds and those sorts of things. So I believe that hits the points that I wanted to make tonight, and I'd be happy to answer questions, and if not, I can turn it over to Duncan Brown.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead?
No, I'll go last.
Okay. So 2.7 million a year, and then in 2034 it goes up to 4 million a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a question for Steve.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this general questions or just questions for you right now?
I can answer legal questions on the bond ordinance and that sort of thing. Otherwise, I think Steve and
Just have them both up.
Duncan can answer financial questions.
Yeah, if you could just have both you guys standing up there so in case.
Okay,
go back
sure,
and forth.
that's fine.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could suggest, Duncan, if he could go ahead and do his presentation,
Oh, okay.
and then some of the questions may get answered.
Okay, I didn't know there was more to come. I thought
Yep,
we were
yep.
ready for questions.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll come back if needed.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Duncan Brown with PFM. We're the city's independent financial advisor. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm typically joined by my colleague Matt Schoenfeld, but he's enjoying some deserved time with a new baby. So I mentioned we're the city's financial advisor. That's sometimes also called a municipal advisor. That is a specific term in the universe of regulated financial entities. We do perform a variety of tasks associated with bond issues and other non-bond related work, but I'm here to talk specifically about bond issues. But the most important thing that I want to flag for members of the council is that very last bullet. We have a fiduciary responsibility to the city. We are obligated to provide advice in its best interest. We are not affiliated with a bank of any sort. We are an advisor and an advisor only. I won't dwell on this too much because there's a lot going on in this chart, but this is basically a graphical representation of the different repayment streams that Steve shared a few moments ago. The total of each of these columns represents the estimated annual payments, the annual debt service on the bonds. And each of those colors within those columns represents the expected source of repayment. So surface water, REIT, fuel and maintenance savings, and general fund. We've also overlaid on here some different bars, or lines, I guess is the term for Excel charts. So some different lines reflect, just trying to convey a sense of sensitivity. So that pink line represents estimated total debt service if interest rates were to increase by 0.5%. The, I guess, purple and orange lines represent debt service, estimated debt service if the city were to choose a longer term than the 25 years that is sort of our base case. And you can see that purple line, where a 30-year term has slightly lower annual payments than the base case. So I won't go into that too much, but that's just to give a sense of sensitivity to interest rate movements as well as different potential terms of the bonds. Steve also mentioned a credit rating and presentation to a credit rating agency. Typically, a municipal entity, a city, when it goes out to borrow money, will apply for a credit rating, which helps make the bonds more marketable. This is similar to a personal credit score, but the scale is very different. So instead of just a numeric score, there are typically expressed sort of in an alphanumeric way. So AAA, AA1, AA2, AA3. We show in this table the different categories of ratings, but within those categories, there are gradations. So AA1, AA2, AA3, A1, A2, A3, so on and so forth. The city is currently rated AA2 by Moody's, so that's 2 notches below AAA, which is the highest rating. And that's pretty typical for cities in Western Washington to be in kind of that AA category. And so in connection with this bond issue, we would go back to Moody's in July and apply for a credit rating. The expectation is that they would affirm the existing rating, but that's not a given. It's not ever a given. I'll speak briefly about how the bonds would be sold. We've used the term bonds quite a bit. Bonds is basically just a way of talking about borrowed money. So the city has borrowed money in a variety of ways in the past, both in the public bond market, so selling bonds to individual and institutional investors through an investment bank, what we call an underwriter. It's also used bank financing. There are several state loan programs that are fairly common for cities. There are also seller or vendor financing. All of these things are sort of variations on a theme. Given the size of this transaction, kind of in that $50 million range, and given the expected term, around 25 years, we're recommending a public sale. These other options just really don't fit the size and the term that we're talking about. In order to sell $50 million of bonds over 25 years, you really have to go to the public bond market to access investors who are looking for that type of investment. And specifically, we're recommending that the city sell these bonds through a competitive sale process. And that's a process in which the city, working with its finance team, its bond counsel, and its financial advisor, prepare the bonds for sale. So prepare a disclosure document, the official statement, which is sort of like a prospectus. We apply for a credit rating, and we put the bonds put up on a platform that accepts electronic bids. And on a date certain, we receive bids up until 8:30 a.m. They typically all arrive at 8:29 a.m. From investment banks around the country. And the city then awards the bonds to whichever investment bank offers the lowest true interest cost on that morning. And that's a very transparent and straightforward way to sell debt, and really gives the city or any entity that uses that approach access to investment banks that really that again may not even have a presence in Washington State, but are interested in the city's bonds nonetheless. The other method of sale involves pre-selecting an investment bank and then negotiating terms with them on the morning of sale. And there are circumstances where that may make sense, but in this case, we're recommending a competitive sale. The size of the bonds in question, the city's credit rating, and frankly, just current market conditions are all factors that weigh into that recommendation. And so again, this is really just rehashing, I think, what Steve may have started with. Where we are in the process is we're still fairly early on. We are working with Foster Garvey and the city in reviewing and preparing that preliminary official statement. And we do expect to then go to Moody's to apply for a credit rating in July. But backing up, we're here talking to you this evening and then the full council next month. So you can kind of see here where we are in this process, where we hope to be in the next month or two. And if we stick to the schedule, the bonds would be sold at the beginning of August and close a few weeks later towards the end of August. And I just want to touch briefly, because it came up earlier with, Bill mentioned that maximum principal amount. I'll say currently, we're estimating a principal amount of around $50 million that would be sold, or, excuse me, $49.5 million that would be sold at a slight premium, which is sort of like points on a mortgage, to generate that $52.5 million in net proceeds for the project. We're also estimating an interest rate around 4.5% currently, true interest cost of about 4.5%. Sorry, make you sit down, stand up. I'm happy to answer questions about the plan of finance, but I'll turn it back to Steve.
Sure, our closing slide is just what, the actual agenda item is to authorize a bond ordinance, and that's going to do these things. It's going to authorize us to issue debt. It's going to help us reimburse ourselves for the land acquisition. It will finance the construction and equipping of the facility. It does pledge the city's resources to repay. It does put us on the hook to do some continuing disclosure throughout the life of the bond in compliance with SEC, MSRB, and all that. And you know, I think I'm just going to back up a couple slides because you had an excellent slide that talked about different levels of payment. And I heard that one of our questions was going to be, why did we select a payment schedule that increases over time? And the biggest reason is that REIT, our real estate excise tax, which is shown here in the yellow bars. I like your graph quite a bit. REIT is going to be increasingly available as other debt issues are extinguished, and that's the main reason. With that, all three of us are here for questions.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So I'll go back to my question. So $2.7 million a year, not all of it from the general fund. However, if SWIM needed money, or, you know, we would have to cover whatever they needed. REIT is scary because we don't know when that's going to come back, if ever. So that 2.7 is a scary number to me. And when we built the Performing Arts Center and Town Square Park, we wanted more things in both. And we had to take a good look at what we were building and cut back. And I'm wondering if we can do the same thing on this. Do we need absolutely everything that we're going to be putting into this building? Or are there things that we can be cutting back on? Because this is a big number. This is much, much larger than we were told when we said 2 years ago. Yeah,
Sure.
let's do this. Much, much larger. So I'm just wondering what we can cut back on, as
Yeah.
we had to do with the Performing Arts Center and Town Square Park.
In our current adopted budget, we put $42 million because we didn't anticipate the land acquisition that we were going to be adding, and that added $8 million right there. I'm going by the amount that the Public Works provided to LUTC at their 83% design, and I can't really speak to the design features as well as EJ and Desiree. They will be here at the first hearing, of course. EJ will be here for the first council meeting. I don't know when land use meets next.
Okay.
But because I agree with you, I'm committed to the lowest principal amount we could possibly do, the lowest payments we can possibly do.
I mean, and I think it's 2034, it goes up to 4 million?
Yeah, yes.
Or, well, actually, it goes up to 3.275 in 2030. So, I mean, we don't know what the future holds, but this is a big number to throw at us when we don't really know what the future holds. And I know that we need this building, but we also have to maintain the buildings and the parks that we have. And I'm just concerned that we need to look at the big picture before we adopt this and
Sure.
know financially where the city's going for the next 10 years. Will we be able to fix up any of our buildings that need to be fixed up? We have the list of what we need.
The ongoing repair and maintenance of our existing facilities.
And so I would just like to see a bigger picture financially for the city.
Sure, and that's why I went over the revenue slides, because if we believe that we know our city? Do we believe that sales tax is going to continue to increase upwards despite economic setbacks? We have the experience of seeing what it did during the pandemic. We also have the experience of seeing what our lodging tax did for the same reason, for the pandemic. Now, the real estate excise tax, that's not from the pandemic, that's from the economic effects of the Federal Reserve raising rates. We are pretty sure rates are going to come down. We don't know when. It could be 1 year, it could be 2 year, it could be 3 year. That's why I think that keeping our fund balance for SWIM as our backup plan is the prudent thing to do. But do we really, now, and looking at the assessed value of our properties all across the city, do we have a strong feeling that those are going to be as stable as they have been in the past? We've seen increases of 12%, 19%. In the last year, we saw a decrease of 4%. So if it's a matter of interest rates returning to low levels so that the real estate sector of the economy recovers, that's what will bring back our REIT revenue. So we have to look at what we think about the underlying economy. We have to know about how we feel about our own city. We need to know our city. And so I think forecasting REIT cautiously and using SWIM as a backup plan is what's going to make sure that we can make the bond payments.
You know, for years, probably 10 years, but maybe more, we've talked about improving Lakota Park. And a young woman I know named Katie, when she was in 6th grade, she testified here, where you're standing, talking about Lakota Park and how it wasn't equal to our other parks, which it isn't, and when would we improve it? She just graduated from college. She's 22 now. We haven't improved that park, and she reminded me of that the other day. And I think of that, and I know we need this building. I'm not saying not to build it. I'm just saying, do we need to spend this much to build it? Is there some way, somehow we could cut back on this? That's what I'm saying. Because we have other needs in the city, and I'm really concerned that we may not be able to get to those needs.
Sure, we can do anything, but we can't do everything.
Correct.
And money will fix every problem in this city, and we can't do everything, and there's not enough money for that, so blame finance. But I'm going with the project that's been approved thus far and looking for how we can finance it, and that's what I'm presenting.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just
Sure.
saying what I'm concerned about.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
A couple of questions. One is, I was also initially concerned about the REIT, but then when you talked about the SWIM fund, but what is the source of the SWIM fund?
That's ratepayers for our surface water management utility. So we can use it for this facility to the extent that it shares in the use of the facility, all of the trucks and the employees and the equipment and the materials. It can pay about 30%. So that's what we've built into the model.
Okay, so the ratepayers for that are all the property owners then? Is it part of the property tax, or exactly what is the?
No, it's specifically billed as a utility. It's not water, it's not sewer, it's stormwater, and that's a utility that the city bills itself to so it's only the users of the stormwater. Chase, can you come up with a better explanation than that?
That's correct. It's
restricted.
Yeah, it's a surface water management utility that the city has. King County does the billing on our behalf, and we get those funds into a restricted fund.
Okay, so I, as a homeowner, am I paying part of that, or?
If you're connected to the surface water management system in the city, yeah, it would be something that you'd be paying.
Yeah, that does blur the picture, the fact that it's billed by King County, and that's who homeowners pay their property tax to, that's true, so.
So it's paid along with property tax?
I'm not sure about that, but it's a restricted revenue that's only the revenue has to be for the benefit of.
Yeah,
those who
I
pay.
know
Yeah.
I know what the
Yeah.
revenue needs to be spent
Yeah.
for. I'm just asking exactly how that revenue is.
Do we get it monthly or
It coordinates daily with our property tax payments that we receive on
Okay.
a
Okay,
daily basis.
all right, okay.
Thank you, Chase, I
And,
always liked you.
And then you mentioned that this is the the payment steps up as other debts are retired.
Yes.
What are the specific debts that will be retired?
That would be for the community center and the Performing Arts Center and the Score Jail.
Okay, and so is this stepping up for the full amount of that retirement, or is there?
That's the amount that becomes available that REIT could then apply to this debt, yeah.
Oh, okay, so with that, you know, are we leaving any, say if the amount X is retired, are you calculating that full X will be applied towards this, or is it X minus 10%, so there's a little bit of?
Are we leaving any wiggle room is your
Right, yeah,
question. And I think our answer is every time we do a biennial budget and adopt a budget, we try to budget and forecast cautiously so that within each 2 years, we should only have an upside. Now, we were wrong on REIT this time. In our current adopted budget, we budgeted cautiously and REIT has come in far lower. So
Okay,
in a normal year, quote unquote normal, when we get to normal economic, now do we ever? So we have to be able to field anything and everything.
okay. Now, with this bond, would there be a penalty for early payoff?
I don't think so. That's a structure question.
So unlike a mortgage, which is a home mortgage, which is typically prepayable at any point, municipal bonds typically have a 10-year call feature, so they cannot be prepaid prior to year 10. They can be advance refunded, which is sort of a way to restructure or get them off your books prior to that time, but it tends to be fairly expensive. So short answer, 10 years, no penalty. Before that, there's typically a cost associated with that.
Okay, all right. And then my last question, with the other chart, it said at 98%, 135%. I mean, I'm a novice at this. I'm asking questions that
Great
you know.
questions. So each investor typically, their municipal bonds can be issued at a premium or at a discount, which is akin to points paid on a mortgage. So they may pay more for a bond that has a rate that's slightly higher than market. So they pay more than face value. Those bonds will be issued at a premium. They may pay slightly less than, or accept an interest rate that's slightly less than current market and would purchase that bond at a discount. And what we're trying to do is establish a range so that we can balance making the bonds attractive to investors who have different investment goals and portfolio goals, and some may want a premium and some may want a discount and some may want a small premium, others might want a larger premium, while also putting some bounds around that so that we don't have some truly wacky structure that is difficult to live with. Based on, we were just in the market with another AA2 rated city last week, about $50 million. Most of the bids were kind of in that 110 to 115% range. So the bidders put interest rates on the bonds that were slightly higher than market, but they purchased them at a premium so that the face value of the bonds was a little less than what the city actually needed, because they got that additional. They sold it at a premium, and they could apply that premium towards the project. So that's when I said that we estimate the par amount of the bonds would be about $49.5 million. That's because we're expecting they would be issued, if they were sold today, at about 110, 115% of face value. So to get to that 52.5, we actually sell less than that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm glad we're a team. I'll bring my third of a brain if you guys bring yours.
President Kochmar?
So Councilmember Dovey can't get on Zoom, but his question, or his concern was adding 5 years to from 25 to 30. He didn't think that was a good idea. But then, of course, that's going to make our payment go up.
That's exactly right, and that's the tension between making sure that it'll fit our budget versus extending it. Our preference would be to make it shorter. If we can make it fit our budget, absolutely agree. Does that make sense?
So, no, I understand that.
And the reason, and the point in time we're going to find out about that is June 25th, when EJ opens his bids.
Now, I know that you're just trying to accommodate what we've done, because we've asked you to do that. But I'm wondering if we should go back. Right now, 52 million is a lot of money. 20 years from now, it's not going to seem that much, but right now, we have to make sure we can pay our bills. So I'm wondering if there's any way we can go back when we get the bids and say, well, maybe we need to rethink what we're doing and build this in increments rather than, so we're not going to issue the bonds before we get the bids, is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. The bonds will be issued August 20th, I think is what we're aiming for, and then the June 25th is when we open the bids. So you bring this question next Tuesday night, talk to EJ about the scope of the size of the project. If there's any flexibility built into that, that would help us all as well.
If there's any way we can do that in increments.
Sure,
and-
now that I'm bringing you the price tag, we're looking at the,
All right.
I totally agree with you.
So, so if we can't call this for 10 years, it's a 10-year call, then we're going to be, whatever the interest rate is, you said between 4.5% and 7% is what we're going to be, the interest rate is going to be.
Well, I don't want to get too technical, but I do want to make a distinction between the true interest cost and the coupon rate on a particular maturity. And the bond ordinance specifies a maximum coupon rate of 7%. But it limits the true interest costs, so the blended rates of all of the different individual maturities from 1 year to 25 or 30 years, it limits that to 5.5%. And that's really the effective rate that the city is paying. That's what we estimate today to be about 4.5%.
So really the thing we need to do is really look at whether or not we need to do this project all at once. Because the only other thing we could do, if we get into a tight spot, we're going to have to say, well, what is it that we're not going to be building or paying or doing? Is it going to be road overlay?
Should we
Is
do it
going
in
to be-
phases, perhaps, something like that? Now, we're looking at doing this bond issue to fund the entire project we've started several months ago working on the preliminary offering statement, so we're looking to proceed within the boundaries of what we've said by the time we do our second hearing.
Yeah. So we've got some talk questions to ask between now and then.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just worried about getting us into a tight spot, the city, because we lose money on the Performing Arts Center. It's never going to make money. It's just that how much are we going to lose every year? That's part of the whole.
I'm afraid the maintenance shop is going to lose money too.
Well,
Actually, perhaps not. If we are a better city and the city thrives, if the retail economy and the homeowners thrive, that will take care of our budget. And I think that's ultimately what we're after.
And
What's the right balance to do?
to be clear, the facility is meant to save us some money too. So council approved additions to it that were not originally contemplated
know.
for fuel and maintenance of the vehicles, and that will save us money in the long term. But-
yeah, I know that.
Councilmember Daniels, I have Councilmember Safa Dawson with her hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Seffer Dawson?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for the discussion. I understand Councilmember Honda and Council President's concern, but even if we do it in phases, or the longer we wait, and it's been brought up that the cost is gonna rise. So tabling it for me is also concerning because the price is gonna go up. So whatever we do, I think we need to act fast and come up with a concrete decision, because otherwise we're gonna continue to increase the rate as we wait longer. But your concern is valid, so I'm not negating that. I'm just saying let's make sure that we also don't wait too long to make a decision before we notice that it's going to increase considerably. And I know, Susan, you brought it up, like in 2034, how much it's going to increase by. So that would be my concern, is to make sure that we're not halting or slowing down the process. Thank you.
Councilmember Dove has his hand raised.
Councilmember
Can you hear me? This is Jack.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple questions or comments. I'm really not a proponent of doing a stair-step approach to payments. I think we need to bite the bullet and just figure out what it's going to be, because I don't have great confidence in REIT coming back. I mean, it's going to come back, but it's going to be a long time, and the interest rates have to come down dramatically to make the movement in that money. And I also would be a proponent that we do look at SWIM, and instead of holding it there as the wild card in case we need the money, we should use that money right from the start to buy down the whole project, so we're borrowing less money. I don't think it makes sense to have money sitting there in hopes that we don't need to use it or use it for something else. If we're going to do this, we got to be all in and get the debt down as low as we can and be prepared to pay for whatever that going rate is from day one. So those are my comments.
Councilmember Dovey, if we were to use SWIM's fund balance and accelerate their part of the total cost of their 30%, just to the extent that we could use their fund balance,
Right.
I think that that would increase the pressure on REIT, that they would have, that the portion of REIT would have to be borne immediately starting year one. Perhaps I can come with, perhaps I can go back and sharpen my pencil and bring some comparison charts that would illustrate that. Because I agree with you, we want to minimize our debt, and we also want to we don't want to box ourselves into a corner where REIT could harm us. I agree with you on that.
I mean, this is a project that is going to cost us more money than we've spent anywhere else in the history of the city. And there should be a lot of concern about what it's going to make it that we can't do. But if we're going to do this, then we got to go all in and make it so that it doesn't affect us in the later years or councils later, in hopes of something coming back. So I'd be a strong proponent of using the SWIM money all in at the very beginning to buy the debt down so we're borrowing less money.
So I will bring a what if to our first hearing to illustrate that, so that you can weigh that. I understand.
And I guess the other question I have is, nobody anticipates interest rates are going to change between now and August. But if they do, what is the point where we as a council say, hey, we just can't bear the cost? I mean, is it a 1% change? Is it a 0.5%? I mean, if we looked at that, if things change. So today we know what it is, but what's our no-go if interest rates, pop a point?
The sensitivity, I think, Duncan, you've been working with are 0.5% or a full percent, 50 basis points or 100 basis points. I think it's what you're looking at on 25 years. Yeah.
Just in broad strokes, an increase of 50 basis points to the estimated borrowing cost would raise the annual payment by about $130,000 annually, and 100 basis points or 1% would be about roughly double that, so $260,000.
$250,000. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dovey, do you have any more questions?
No, thank you.
No problem. Councilmember Honda?
I have an additional question, thank you. On your graph, you have fuel maintenance savings. And so the first year, you're anticipating a saving of $202,376. So in this state, the great state of Washington, by 2030, I believe we need to be have electric cars. So we should be having fuel savings anyway by having electric cars eventually as a city. I don't think we have very many now, if we have any. But as we purchase new vehicles, we're going to have to at least make them hybrid, so we're going to have fuel savings anyway. Is that going to impact how much you anticipate saving? And will all of the vehicles that need fuel in the future, will they all be required to fuel at this location, or will they still go to other places in the city?
Currently, we have some hybrid vehicles, and we have a handful of, I think, some all-electric police motorcycles. EJ and I have been talking about the purchasing in the future as we look at our entire fleet. It's far enough out that we can't see it and quantify it really well, but it is in our thinking.
Okay,
I don't have anything hard and with any numbers behind it, though.
so will all of our vehicles that need fuel be required to get fuel at the maintenance center?
Yes, that's in order to achieve the savings, yes. Yes, that's our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for good questions.
I don't see any more lights, so I guess it's my turn now. Couple questions, a lot of numbers. Thanks for the information. The first set of questions I have is, we have a $57 million bond that we're looking at putting the max top on, and it sounds like our actual offering will be 49.5 to start with. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned that we're going to go with the public. What is the advantage to the public versus the other options you had? And is there a reason why we went that route, or we're looking at going that route?
Competitive sale versus negotiated?
Great questions. So the other options beyond a public offering of bonds to investors throughout the country would be selling directly to a commercial bank. We call that a bank placement. It's really just a loan from a commercial bank. Banks typically won't extend credit longer than 20 years, and in this environment, it's really more like 15. So given the desire to to fit payments within the structure we've been discussing, that doesn't fit. And the size would preclude a lot of banks, I think, from being interested there. The various state and federal loan programs are also not a great fit for other similar reasons. So a public offering is really other cities, other municipalities that are looking to borrow $50 million over 25 years, this is the route they go. Within that public sale framework, there are two choices of how to pick the investment bank that you sell these bonds to. One is to pre-select them and then negotiate. That's the negotiated sale. And one is to offer the bonds up through a competitive auction, and that's the competitive sale route. That's what we're recommending. That means that on the morning of sale, we get those bids, and then Steve can come up here later that morning or whenever the next opportunity is and say, here are the bids we received. We got 8 bids, 10 bids, whatever, and here's the lowest interest cost, and that's what we accepted.
Okay, that makes sense. The second part is have you ever had it where they do not fully fund, and what happens if you do not fully fund? We only get $40 million the bond funded. What happens at that point?
That's a great question. We do put in the notice of sale that bids are required to be all or none, so you can't submit a partial bid. There have been circumstances where you get, sometimes you get more bids, sometimes you get fewer bids. It depends on which investment banks, what their investor clients are saying and what else they're looking at nationwide. But even, we were in the market with a competitive sale in March of 2020, like the week after COVID shut everything down, and we still got 6 or 7 bids. It's a pretty robust market for certain credits and structures, and what we're talking about here fits into that easily understood, common structure, AA category rating.
Gotcha. So it sounds like when this goes out for bid, it's a single entity that will be doing the bid. It's not multiple groups bidding pieces of it up. It's actually one entity bidding for the whole piece.
Typically, there are sometimes smaller banks will form a syndicate, but they still have to buy the whole thing.
Gotcha.
How they split it up is their problem.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense on that one then. The next one I had was, this is actually going to go to Director Groom. If we were to have the same debt load right now, how would our finances look for last year, 2023, if we had that 2.7 million on there?
If we were making the payments using SWIM and REIT and general fund,
Yeah, how would it have affected last year's or this year's budget I'm asking for some hypotheticals, obviously.
Where it would impact us the most would be our general fund, the $400,000 portion that comes from the general fund. That's going to have the most impact. I think REIT and SWIM, those are restricted funds, those are for exactly these kind of purposes. It's going to be the additional portion that the general fund's going to bear.
Okay. Would the general fund been able to bear it last year for the 400K? It would have been really tight, or?
You know, it comes back to, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. If we make this a priority, we would have made that a priority last year, and we would have not greenlighted. I'm trying to think what we did last year that we didn't do, that we
We would have
greenlighted. Yeah.
We would have bumped a project or moved something
Yeah.
around then? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The next question I have is, why can't we make the bond for 50 million instead of 57 and putting a lock on? Because I know quite a few of us council members have quite a bit of concern that if we say 57, it may come back at 55 or something like that, which means then at that point, we're looking at trying to chop that down.
I hope the bids come in below 52.5. 52.5 is the current estimate, and so making it a cap of 57 is just wiggle room. We would have to extend to 30 years in order to make that happen, and I'm not sure that would, that, we're just giving ourselves flexibility so that we can still finance.
Is there any reason why it couldn't be 50 million instead of 57 million?
The current estimate is 52.5, so I'm trying to fit the entire bond issue over the length of the bond term. That's why I'm looking to finance 100%. Go ahead.
I think there's,
Yeah.
sorry, if I can interject, there's also a structuring reason why, maybe it's not 57 million, but why we typically recommend that the ordinance authorize a slightly higher amount than is needed in case the winning bid comes in at a slight discount. So again, I think it's very unlikely, given the current market environment, but if the winning bid were to be structured at a 98% dollar price, that means that you'd have a very low interest rate attached to it, but they'd be buying that at a discount, and so the face value of the bonds would have to be a little higher than the amount of money that's actually needed.
What would the face value be at that point with the scenario you just gave?
So
Just rough ballpark.
52.5 million plus issuance costs, probably 55.
55, okay.
I feel comfortable, I'm doing back of the napkin math in my head, so that's
Okay.
dangerous, but
Yep. It gives me just a ballpark, so there's something to think about. All right.
And we're kind of used to this premium and discount business when we do on our investment side. When I go and I buy $1 million investment, I might get it for $900,000. We're gonna get our full $1 million back at the maturity, but the cash flow is gonna be less. So depending on how we want to pay our interest payments and when we want to pay the full amount of the principal, that's, over 30 years, it makes quite a bit of difference.
Gotcha.
And that's why we put some boundaries on it. When I'm
Right.
buying a 5-year investment, I kind of don't care.
All right, so basically what we're looking at do is just approving the opportunity to go out for the bond at $57 million. And then we're still going to wait to find out what the actual bid, when the bids come back for the actual cost of the build-out of the facility, correct?
We'll find those on June 25th at the bid opening. Yep.
Okay, let me see if there's anything else. And then we're looking at sales, REIT, general, and potentially SWIM for the financing instruments
Right.
for this? Okay, thanks all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. You've been a tough audience.
Do we have any more questions? No. Do I have a motion then?
Jack, are you still on?
I'm still here. I don't have the motion in front of me. I can second it.
Okay, I'll make the motion, you second it. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to a public hearing and first reading on June 4th, 2024.
Sorry.
Second.
Sorry to interrupt. If Councilmember Dovey is participating, then you will no longer
Oh, okay.
needed to
Thank you.
participate.
You're
So it'll
right.
be Mr. McDaniel
So-
and Mr. Dovey,
Jack, you're making that motion, okay?
or Paul can make it.
Paul, why don't you, Paul,
I'll
if
make-
you
I'll
make
make
the
the motion.
motion, I'll second it.
Sounds good. All right, committee. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to a public hearing and first reading on June 4th.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Doesn't look like we have any questions. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have two ayes, ayes covered. Thank you. Next item, item C, is Arts and Special Events Assistant, full-time position. That will be done by Director Hutchinson. Or not.
Thank you, Councilmember McDaniel and fellow council members. My name is Kevin Hutchinson, the Recreation Manager at the Parks Department. The question you have before you is, should the City Council approve the converting the special Arts and Special Events Assistant position from part-time to full-time? You should have a staff report with you. The options considered would be 1, to approve the position change, or 2, do not approve the change and direct staff. The mayor's recommendation is option 1. Just some brief overview of this memo. The financial impacts for the city to move the special event assistant part-time to a full-time position would be, currently it's funded at $23,000 approximately per year for the part-time position. That is benefits included. To move that to a full-time position for benefits included as well would be $87,000. This would be supported by the recreation budget in the general fund using current general fund dollars. If approved, this change would also appear on your next budget adjustment. And also, just to note, this has been thoroughly vetted through our Finance and Human Resources Department already. Some background information on that position. It's been around for at least 10 years, the part-time position, used to play a key role in the planning execution of our various special events. The last couple of special events we had, many of you we've seen there, were the Touch a Truck event and the Hooked on Fishing event, which were huge successes. We've grown that special event position wildly in the last 10 years or so to include more than 12 to 15 events per year. And so this new position, this additional position would be to move it to a full-time position. As I said, the city commissions have undertaken, as you know, some ambitious endeavors in the past couple years to make some large-scale community events to benefit our city. Those events, as you know, have been the Community Festival and the MLK Day put on by our Diversity Commission, and the upcoming Arts Explosion, which is put on by the Arts Commission, as well as the Senior Resource Fair, which Susan was a part of a couple weeks ago. And so in the past, these events were helped to be run by city staff, say in the community development side, that were generally not a planner or a special event professional. So we've had some need and some feedback from our city commissioners and our staff to have that high-level professional standards, which we use in all of our special events. So transitioning this arts and special event position from part-time to full-time will be able to enhance those amazing events that are already benefiting to our community. And again, this will create an economic benefit to our community, as well as enhance our positive city image, and create just amazing experiences for our community as well. And right now, it is important to note that we do have an arts and special event assistant. Her name is Abby Wennick, who has currently taken charge on some of our events as well already. She's doing an amazing job. And so with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you have.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Thank
Always
you.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
So this position would go from part-time to full-time and would be available to all commissions that have a special project, or limited to a certain type of project?
All commissions, yeah, that would be promoting a citywide event.
So instead of the commission staff doing the contracts and finding the vendors and finding the funding for the event, this person would do that?
Correct.
Then what is the role of the commission members at that point?
To provide direction, to provide vision, to provide just community input on what type of events they would like to see, or if they would like to see events at all. So as an advisory role to that staff.
So does this person then still do the Santa breakfast and all of that?
Correct.
stuff?
So yeah, part of that
The
would be
Halloween.
keeping the part-time position role as well. So providing assistance to, yeah, like you said, the tree lighting, the Santa breakfast, music in the park, movies in the park, all those events as well.
So there'd be a part-time and a full-time person?
Well, they would be keeping that part-time, I guess, that part-time role, that part-time.
Oh, they would, okay.
Yeah, what they have already done in the past.
And most cities our size have someone who does this full-time.
I can't speak to that, but I've heard of several cities that do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, you said that the budget report's 87,000, and is that the total for that position, or is that in addition to the, what's?
That's the addition to the 23,000, so the
Okay,
extra
so-
expense that the
So,
city.
so it'd be
would
about a
take on.
total of 100,000 for the position altogether, okay. I mean, I'm a big advocate of having a professional do it. With my own business, I work with a lot of planners, and I really see the value that they bring to things. So, okay, so there'd no longer be a part-time person?
Correct.
It'd be one full-time person?
Correct.
Are you looking at that, the current part-time person becoming the full-time person, or are you gonna be looking
We
everywhere?
we would transition that current part-time person into the full-time person right now.
Okay, all right. And she's well qualified for the,
She is, yeah. She's done an amazing job already. She started at the city of Kirkland, doing events there, planning events, and has kind of used this last several months. We hired her in February in the part-time role. Had started her with the current city-sponsored events that we've been working on, and then also transitioning her into helping currently the Diversity Commission for the past 2 months, planning their community festival right now. So she has actually taken the lead in the planning, as well with Cassie Swan, our current arts and events coordinator.
okay, so she'd be working closely with Cassie then, and?
Yes, yep.
Uh-huh, okay. All right, I think that answers my questions.
Councilmember Dovey has his hands raised.
Councilmember Dovey?
Yeah. Yes, I just want to understand, so we're going to take, right now it's targeted, they go from a part-time person to a full-time, basically going from mid 30,000 to 100,000 a year. Is that correct?
Correct.
And when we're going to make that size of jump, you're saying we're not going to go cast a net through the whole Puget Sound and see if there's somebody better qualified?
Not at this
Not
point.
yet.
When we did hire the special event assistant, right now, we were aware that this could be an opportunity. So when we did hire for that event, we were looking for the best qualified person, and we did have over 30 to 40 people that applied for the position. We interviewed several people, and Abby stood out immensely in that interview. And the plan is also to, within that first couple months, to do some vetting as well. But it could be a conversation to have.
And the only concern I have, I think we should have a full-time person, but the way it was, I heard it when Councilmember Honda asked about what are the commissions going to do? Are we kind of taking what they've done in the past and bringing it more in-house so we control it more? Is that kind of one of the reasons we want to do this, or?
I wouldn't say so. Sorry, I wouldn't say so.
Maybe that's the wrong words to use, but it gives us a lot more follow-through if we have somebody on staff than a volunteer that has a crisis at home.
Correct, it does, and it wouldn't be taking all the power away from the commission. There still would be subcommittees that they work together on, and I think you're right, there would be a little bit more oversight that we can have as a city, and I think also just the professionalism, the contacts that we have, the ability to go get more sponsors, the ability to have the time, but also, again, working with the commission and their vision, their connections as well are very important. So it wouldn't be taking power away, it would just be kind of centralizing it a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So I'd like to just say for the commissions and having served on commissions that did events, I think if the commission members still want to have a really active role in the planning of their event, that they should, and that the special events assistant will certainly be a big help. But I do want to make sure that the commission members still get to do what they would like to do with the assistants. My question is, it says that this part-time position is currently funded in the amount of $23,000, and it's going to go up to $87,000?
It's $87 additional $1,000 over that 23. So the additional cost to the city is $87,000.
So currently, this person is making $23,000?
Give or take, they're in a part-time role, so every year it fluctuates. They work about 20 hours per week. So give or take, that's just a general number of what we came up with over the past several years using how many hours they work per year.
So they'll more than double their, triple their salary by going full-time?
Potentially, yes. Those are with benefits as well, so there's an added
Okay.
benefit cost when you come on as a full-time employee. There's, I think, an extra % that they pay to full-time employees for health benefits. Stop me if I'm wrong, but with a part-time employee, they don't get as large of a percentage for part-time benefits. So the benefits do increase, I think, dramatically when you become full-time.
So part-time employees get benefits, but not the same as full-time?
Correct.
Well, I think when you have a FTE, a full-time employee, it's usually like a 28% additional
Right.
for the benefits.
30%, easy math.
Okay, well, I just wanted to call attention to that. All right, thank you.
I don't see more lights, so I'll ask my questions real quick. So my full understanding, it's $110,000 for an event planner. Okay.
Correct.
Full-time employee. All right, the second part was this employee is currently part-time with us?
Correct. And can I go back? 110,000 includes the benefits, so total
Understood.
cost to the city.
Total
Yeah.
cost, gotcha, at the moment in time.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
The next one is, so they currently are part-time with us. They are the, Abby, is that the correct name?
Yes.
Addie or Abby?
Abby.
Abby, okay. So Abby is currently doing website work also, isn't? on-
No, that is Ally
Ally,
McIntyre,
okay,
yes.
thank you. Wanted to make sure I got the people right.
It's hard being their supervisor to name it right.
Okay. And then will they be going to all of the commissioner meetings or only the ones that require it? Like, what is their timing restrictions going to be for? Because, I mean, we mentioned 3 or 4 of the events are committee-based events. So how much is, actually, maybe rephrase that. What percentage of their work is going to be committee-based versus city-based?
We see it at about 50/50.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily see them going to every single commission meeting, but generally serving on all the subcommittee for the planning portion of it. If there isn't an event coming up, say after the community fair, the community festival, there might not be a need for that person to work on commission work and transition their work to the next big event, which would be the haircutting festival that we put on.
Okay.
So it's kind of moving from one commission to the other based on the timeline of the city, the timeline of the events and how they're run throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is actually for committee member Dovey. Are you still there, Jack?
I am here.
All right. A question for you real quick. The recommendation is to move this consent agenda. Since this is a hiring of a full-time employee, I would actually prefer to have that on the business agenda in case any more questions want to pop up. Do you have?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Just real quick, legal? Do I just need to make a change to
Just
business agenda instead of
make it
consent?
in the motion.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll make a motion then. I move to forward the proposed position change to the June 4th, 2024 business agenda for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. There's no other comments, then all those in favor say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Yays have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, item D, purchase of replacement copiers, the excitement.
Good evening, Councilmember McDaniel, council members. Before you tonight is a hopefully simple item, purchase of 3 replacement copiers.
We can make it difficult.
Ditto.
Trust us.
So, before you, as part of the staff report, we each budget biennium, where we look at our assets that are up for replacement, from all type of equipment, meaning, computers, laptops, servers, network devices. Copiers are one of them. We've identified 3 copiers for 2024 purchase. We budgeted $50,400 for these 3 copiers. And total cost to the city is $48,420 for these specific purchases. We will be replacing a community center copier, one in the law department, as well as one at the Performing Arts and Event Center. These typically we run for 7 years as a life cycle. We find that really after the 5th year, we start getting more savings over like doing a lease or something of that nature, which is why we continue to purchase them. And with our current copier maintenance company that's providing the service on these copiers, they're kept in good working order for those 7 years, which is kind of the maximum life cycle that we can get out of them. And so we're purchasing off of the NASPO cooperative purchasing contract as part of this, and that's it. So we're seeking approval. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
Shockingly, I don't see any questions at the moment, so I will make a motion. I move to forward the proposed purchase of 3 replacement copies to the June 4th, 2024 consent agenda for council approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries.
All right.
Thank you very much.
But
Thank you.
wouldn't a mimeograph machine be a lot cheaper?
Well, we can check eBay and
All right. Business item E, 2023 Edward Bryan Memorial Justice Assistance Program Grant Award Acceptance, MOU.
Good evening, Councilmember McDonald, council members. My name is Diane Shines. I'm the Civilian Operations Manager for the Police Department. I'm responsible for most of the civilian units in the PD, and I manage the Justice Assistance Grant, or the JAG program. The policy question for you this evening is, should the City of Federal Way Police Department accept the fiscal year 2023 Edward Bryn Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Award and sign the MOU? Just for background, the Federal Way Police Department has been allocated a project award of $42,958 by the JAG program. Acceptance of the grant requires no matching funds, and any costs covered by the grant funds will be minimal and absorbed by the Federal Way Police Department's operating budget. The Federal Way Police Department will use the grant funds to purchase a virtual reality training system to train officers in the area related to de-escalation techniques and use of force. Traditional scenario training in a large department like Federal Way can create logistical challenges, impact our overtime budget, and personal resources. The VR system is a highly portable, easy to deploy, and is a cost-effective solution that can increase efficiency by delivering important training and allow officers and staff more time to serve the citizens of Federal Way. On behalf of the Police Department, we are requesting approval for the fiscal year 2023 JAG Grant Award Acceptance and MOU. Thank you. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them about the VR technology.
All right. No question. I have, okay. Just have a question. What is the, you said VR, right? What is the VR? What is the actual scenarios that the VR software does?
The product is called the Street Smarts VR, and it's a fully immersive experience to expand training for officers. So they'll get like real life stress training. It's a mobile device. We can use it anywhere, as for instance, like a 3x3 building up to a 25x25 building. And it's as far as the degree of view, it gives the officers a realistic training view. We have fewer trainers on scene, so you can actually have one person conducting the training versus 2, 3 training officers in a large facility managing all of that. I understand that the device, you get a 450-degree field of view, so they kind of get a real sense of, what's going on and can respond to the type of training that's provided.
And Chair, I have a couple, I know that the Deputy Chief Sumter actually went and looked at one of these. Our insurer, WCIA, purchased one just to show people that they exist and was basically advocating their use. So I know that the insurance company is happy.
They have to like that.
So.
Gotcha. And is it goggles or is it like a screen? Okay, that makes sense.
It is a
then.
goggle system, yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Is there any, okay, I don't see any questions, so we'll move on. We'll make a motion. I move to forward the proposed JEG grant award acceptance and MOU signature authorization to the June 4th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next item, it will be Economic Development Q1 report. We have multiple items underneath that one.
Okay. Good evening, FEDERAC Chair McDaniel and Council President Kochmar and other members of the committee and council. Tanya Carter, your Economic Development Director. I'm going to be up here for a while, so I thought it might actually be a little bit entertaining to bring some of the team that is making all of the magic behind the scenes happen, so you don't have to listen to me for the whole time tonight. So as we do at FEDERAC, we present quarterly updates to FEDERAC and to council on what economic development is doing, the progress on our programs. And this evening, we have 3 of our contractors that are working on our programs, so you can hear directly from them, and they can entertain you as well with some information. So first, at the request actually of Chair McDaniel, we put together a much simplified graph that gives you hopefully a better overview of all of the ARPA-related economic development programs that economic development is working on. And we created it in 4 columns, which are kind of the 4 main buckets that economic development works in. So from left to right, you've got the 4 buckets. And then at the bottom, a simple traffic light system. Red is not started yet. Yellow is program in process. And then green is completed. So we were awarded this funding back in the end of last year, November, December time period. So within the first 6 months, we've made substantial progress. So 2 of the programs we have already completed, which are in green, and then another probably 80% of the programs are in yellow, which means that they are on process and they are in the works, and you'll hear from a couple of them tonight. And then 3 of them we are still in the red because we are in the process of working with vendors, selection, and setting things up. So we first have our Start to Cart program from Member Marketplace, which is the educational program for businesses in the city. And I will pass it over to Sherry Edelson, who is the president and owner of the company. She's online. And Tooch, can you advise me what I need to do to make sure is she on? Oh, great. Okay. So Sherry Edelson. Go ahead. And you've heard from her before when she introduced the program. So this is just an update on where we are, and I will flip the slides while she is talking.
Thank you. Thank you, council members, for having me. I'm glad to be back. So far, we've done a number of things to get ready for the Start to Cart program and the training for small businesses. We've got the initial website set up. On our end, we're working with your IT team to transfer it over to the Shop Local Federal Way domain to switch that over. From there, we've also reviewed approximately 4,000 businesses that are registered within the city of Federal Way to determine the businesses that would most likely need help from the e-commerce platform or the initial site on there, and then also the training for the online e-commerce program. We prioritized a list on our end of 400 businesses that are restaurants and bakeries, or retailers, product businesses, those who can benefit from this initial training and the marketplace themselves first. So we started outreach to those while we're waiting for the final transfer of the domain to get over so we can start the actual program. So As soon as we can get the final parts switched over, we'll finish up the website side, and then we can start to get the businesses enrolled. And then we estimate within 2 to 5 weeks, we'll start the first start-to-cart programming with those businesses. Again, it's a 6-week program to train them in e-commerce basics. In the initial outreach that we've done to small businesses, there's about 20 to 25% or so that list themselves as either brand new to e-commerce or as novice or intermediate, just getting started, but still may need some help in doing that. So those are our targeted ones that we want to work with first. And again, we'll continue to push out from that list of 400. After we get the site going and onboarded, we'll start communications to the rest of the 4,000 that are in there, working with Tanya's team as well. And to continue to bring businesses into the platform and into that cohort training that we'll run several times throughout the year, depending on need from the businesses in the community.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's the overall piece from there. So really just pushing towards this next stage of getting everything finalized and starting to enroll businesses to the site and then into the program as well.
I do have one quick question. Of the responses that you have, how many of them are interested in moving forward and filling and signing up themselves?
So far of the ones that we know that have opened it or seen it, it's about 12% that so far have expressed interest so far. And that's just from, I think, 1.5 emails. So there's an initial email that went out to it and then retargeted some of those that we know that maybe had seen it or couldn't click because there was an error with that first click. And so we'll continue to do a couple more of those before the first outreach. So about 12% so far of that list.
And then is that list being provided by our economic development?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And just for context, normally on email campaigns like this, and our next marketing company can probably give a better percentage on this, but it's usually, I believe, like 4 to 6% response rates on things like that. So it's a pretty high response rate, relatively speaking, for this kind of outreach.
Thank you.
Can I ask?
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Honda.
So this class is going to start soon, or not in 6 weeks, but
Yes.
in 2, okay. And is it limited to just the 15 responses that you got?
No.
So you can have unlimited people in there?
Correct.
You have to be 18 and older?
Yes.
And is there anything that we can do for those under 18 who are trying to start their own business selling online?
It's something that, Sherry, if you want to share what you've done in the past with other folks, but my initial response would be, I'm not sure, so don't quote me unless our attorney is here, which he's not. I don't know if 18 is the legal age for a business license, and that is one of the requirements, is having a business license, because we need to make sure that it's a licensed business in Federal Way. And I'm not clear on those rules, but we can certainly check on it. But, okay, so 18 in Washington State. But I don't know, Sherry, if you have any solutions in other states, or?
Sometimes there are family businesses that may assist their children in running businesses, so the parent might have filed for it and they co-run the business. That's sometimes the same for YouTube channels or some of those other practices as well. So there could be some of those out there.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And we can certainly take it case by case. If council, for example, knows someone, certainly please send them our way, because this is obviously iterative and it's something new. So we would be more than happy to support, wherever we can with any businesses, if it's like a exception type case that we might be able to look into.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're ready to move on then. Thank you.
Great. So next, we have Madcap Marketing. We have 2 of the team members that are here. Stephanie Schramm, who's the owner and co-founder, is going to present. She also brought her teammate with her. So this is a 3-month campaign that we did to basically do 2 things. Number 1 is to really start to put the word out to the Federal Way community to get people to start digging around and having conversations about who are the authentic people, places, and things in Federal Way. And essentially what the core of this is really trying to start figuring out what's the soul of Federal Way, what's the personality of Federal Way, like what are some of the things that, if you say the word Federal Way, like what do you associate Federal Way with? And so it was really just trying to get at that essence, number 1, Number two, also just start to build some content for us. So what are some of the things, that resonate with residents, businesses, people that are visiting the city? And then number three, of course, is so that we can start to formulate some of the other programs that we're doing, such as the Marketing in Federal Way, the program that we have running with DCI. So I will hand the microphone over to Stephanie, and there's just 3 slides on here that she'll go through to share the program results.
Thanks for having us, council members. We are appreciating the time. I'm Stephanie, this is Colton. We will make this quick and then answer any questions you have. So like Tanya said, our goal is to help attract workforce, residents, and employees to the City of Federal Way. So we're just trying to gather some information so that we can then compile that information in a way where it can be formatted to be used in future marketing campaigns and messaging for the city to attract more businesses that you might want to have here and building up your workforce. So we sent out, first thing we did was build a branded survey for you, and we sent that to all of your business owners. We sent it to residents, and we tried to get in front of as many employees as we could, which was a bigger task. And after sending that out for about 8 to 10 weeks in different variations, we did emails, we did social media campaigns, and we did a paid email marketing campaign. We got about 135 what I consider valid responses back. We got more, but ones that were usable for this purpose. And some of those were, let me see if I can toggle, there we go. Some of those had very commonalities. So we do have, and your economic development staff now has our full report, and we tried to compile any commonalities that kept coming up consistently. And I put a short slide together to show you those. Camp Moxie, Steel Lake, actually your parks in general were mentioned quite a bit, so something to be really proud of is your parks departments. Your bonsai museum, which now I'm intrigued and I need to go visit. And so we just kept going and getting some of the people, places, and things that kept coming up. What we're doing now for next steps, just to keep you guys informed on the next steps, is we're going to put together, like she said, a library of graphics, messaging that you guys can then pull from at any given time as needed as marketing and sales opportunities arise. So we're going to storyboard out kind of what we heard and what people are saying. We're trying really hard to put together, like, here's where Federal Way started, here's who we are now, and here's what we want to be in the future. So we're going to build you a content library full of messaging, graphics, and a storyboard that we think will be usable for future marketing and sales campaigns.
Nice. Out of curiosity, which one of the avenues of approach worked the best for getting responses?
That's a great question. Some of my team members might fight over that one. I would say the email probably worked the best, just because our open rate and our response rates were higher. However, the social media campaign got extremely high impressions, so visibility. So it kind of, I'm looking at the end result on usable surveys, and that would be the email campaign. But your social media campaign that we ran almost generated 1 million impressions within your city limit footprint. So that was a really high touch point.
I'd be curious to get more information on that later.
Yeah, we can give you all those reports. We have all the numbers.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Walsh?
Just a quick question on that one graphic you showed. Camp Moxie.
Yeah.
What is Camp Moxie? I've never heard of it.
It's, you literally rent RVs from like the 70s who've been kept in really good condition. So you get like a kind of a different kind of vibe for renting places. So yeah, it's something I'd not heard of and had to look up myself, and I've lived here.
And it's based here in Federal Way, or?
It is, and it was actually the #1 response on the survey result.
It's Federal Way's best kept secret then, I guess. I don't know. So I mean,
And that's the whole point too, is to get Federal Way on the map and to get people to understand what is here and why this is the place to do business. That's the whole point of why we're in the building.
Interesting. Do you have any questions online?
No, I'm just looking at Camp Moxie.
They're all Googling
Okay.
Camp Moxie now.
Yeah, their traffic volume just went up.
So we will see you in the near future with some storyboarding and graphics to follow up and report, and we'll do deeper reports for you.
Awesome, appreciate it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I was also very interested, and I think that definitely from the tourism aspect of economic development, we will be making a visit out there to check things out. So if any council members would like to join us, please let us know.
I think it's a couple.
Yeah, we might do some s'mores by the campfire, something like that. Next, we actually have Ariana, who is our grant writer, who you've listened to many times before. What we're now starting to do is we have a substantial body of data and metrics, and so these next slides are the slides that you will be seeing for the rest of the year as we update you on the progress. And Ariana, actually, for ease of this, I'm just going to keep sharing, if you're okay with that, and you can just share that one extra data point verbally.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I just did something. I didn't mean to screen share. Let me stop sharing.
If you want, if you want, you can do that too, to share your screen. Oop.
No, that's okay. Sorry about that. Not sure what happened there, but I think everything's normal now.
We can't actually see the screen. Hold on.
No, I'm so sorry.
Thomas, I might need a hand. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what I did.
I'm not sure.
Is she supposed to share or are you supposed to
No,
share?
I will.
All right, so that we just share the screen. We close down Steve's thing here.
And I just need this one, Adobe. Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Ariana.
All right. Well, sorry for that rocky start, but thank you all for having me. It's nice to see you again. I am Ariana Garfolo, the grant writer who's here with Collaborative Partners Initiative. And as Tanya mentioned, I just wanted to give you an update about our progress. Last time I was here, I gave a more detailed overview about what we're doing and everything that we're putting together. And so this will be kind of the standard update for future FedRAC meetings of keeping tabs on the numbers and reporting those to everyone here. So the number of grants in total that we have researched for the City of Federal Way is 53. And so these 53 grants are broken down into the different categories that are below. So of those 53, 4 of those applications have been submitted, and those submitted applications total $2.8 million. That is the data point. Tanya mentioned that I would just mention verbally. And then the applications in progress, we have 2. Again, a number to mention on that is 143,000 of grant applications that are currently in progress. There are 5 applications that have been declined. So what this category means is that we have identified a grant that potentially could have been a fit for economic development or parks or one of the other departments, but for a variety of reasons that grant was passed on by the department. So in some cases, it might be that the department realized that they didn't have enough staffing to actually carry out that grant if they received it, or that they decided to pass on it because it didn't fit with their priorities moving forward and things like that. So there are five of those that have been passed on to departments but then declined. There are 15 grants that have been saved for later. So what that category means is grants that are relevant, applicable for Federal Way, but the timeline doesn't match up. So maybe the application deadline has already passed, but it's something that has a recurring deadline. So we're keeping that on the spreadsheet in our master grant library so that that can be applied for next time the cycle comes around. And then the final category is grants not applicable. So there are 27 of those. What that category means is grants that we started to look into to research, whether that was by request from someone at the city or some of the grants that came from the trip to DC and some of the senators and Congress people there who shared list of potential grants. So those 27 grants are all grants that we researched and then realized for one reason or the other, Federal Way would not be eligible or the grants wouldn't be applicable. So for example, maybe there's a grant for remodeling an airport or something like that that doesn't fit with Federal Way. So that's an explanation of each of those categories.
Ariana, can I just jump in really quick?
Yeah.
So there was a question, I believe, I don't remember where exactly it was, but there was a question about which departments are actually the focus of the pilot program this year. So just wanted to clarify, the departments that we're focusing on are community development, economic development, police department, and community development, economic development, police department, and parks, as well as we did identify a grant for the courts. So we, at this time, if we do find something that might be fitting for Public Works, we are passing it along to the director and the assistant director. But because they have such a robust grant program, infrastructure program, we wanted to focus on the other departments and kind of get a system rolling with them and not terribly interfere with Public Works and their very robust program that they already have for grants, because that is a large structure of their funding. So just wanted to clarify that. I don't remember where the question came up, but yep, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Tanya. So this is a flow chart of the grant process. So many of the work really comes in the first two steps on the left, the project identification and the grant selection. We wanted to show this because, as you saw from the last slide, there are more grants that have been researched than have been applied for or submitted. And so we just wanted to point out that a lot of the work is happening in these first two steps on the left of identifying the project, the need, and then selecting the grant for that, which is where all of the research comes in and determining whether the city is eligible and whether the department has capacity and all of that stuff. So there's really a lot of work on the left side of this flow chart with those first two steps, and then sometimes the middle steps of getting the grant. Actually, it's really the three left categories. So initiating the grant, the third category there includes researching the grant requirements, creating the checklist, figuring out what's required for the grant. So again, that's a lot of the legwork. So that whole first half of the chart is really the legwork before you even get into knowing whether or not a grant is able to be applied for, and kind of peeling back the layers of that onion of the grant to get into whether or not it's actually a good fit. So this next slide shows a breakdown of the total number of hours of work so far. So far, CPEN, we have done 176.25 hours of work. And so we have broken this down into the different categories. And again, we'll be presenting this every month so you can keep track of how we're doing and what we've been working on. So the grant applications, so this is the actual writing the grants. So this is the 4 grants that have been submitted. CPEN hasn't entirely written all of those. Some of them have been spearheaded by Parks, but the ones of those that CPEN has done, we've done 39.5 hours that have been spent on those. Also meetings, calls, emails, etc., communications with city staff. This includes Tanya Carter and Juliana, her assistant, as well as anyone else at the city that we may communicate with. We spent 43 hours so far on that. Creating and maintaining deliverables. So these are some of the items I mentioned the first time I presented to you, such as the grant library, that full database that we've been building out of all of the grants, as well as the space we've created to store these documents, things like that. That's 19.25 hours. And then the research into the grants is 74.5 hours. So if you flip back, Tanya, to the next slide.
That's fine with it.
Sorry, were you going to jump in with something?
No, it's this way. Yeah, sorry. go ahead.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so that 75 or 74.5 hours, that really is the left side of this chart here with the grant selection, and even initiating the grant, doing the research. So yeah, so there really is just tons of research and background knowledge to be gathered before the grant writing process starts. As you notice, the actual writing process is shorter, the 39.4 hours, 39.5 was almost right. So yeah, that's the green column in the middle of the actual grant writing. So yeah, that's the data that I had to present to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
President Kochmar?
What are the 4 grants that have already been submitted?
So the 4 grants that have been submitted are the EECBG grant, which we spoke about previously. That one was for $147,000. There were 2 grants that the Parks Department submitted. Both of them are for new turf fields for Fields and Celebration Park. Those totaled $2.7 million total. And then there was a grant from the Washington Tourism Department for $25,000.
So Tanya, you remember when we were in the Department of Commerce and we talked about the pedestrian overpass and that there was money for that kind of a project? Is that something you're going to keep in the?
Yes, so the 2 grants that we had mentioned, and there's one that we're just in the process of applying to right now. CURB is one of them, and then the EECBG grant that Ariana mentioned. Those are kind of door openers, if you will, to be eligible for further grants for construction and things like that. So that was a large part of also why we decided to apply for those 2 grants. So that's kind of the one avenue. There is another funding source that we are looking into, and we will provide more details as we can. But it is another grant, and we just, as you can see, there's a lot of research that has to be done before we can actually decide if it will be eligible. And so we're going back and forth on that, and we'll provide more information, hopefully in the next couple weeks on that.
Thank you.
I don't see any more questions at the moment. Is there any questions online? Nope. All right, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ariana.
Thank you so much.
Yep, go ahead. So next is just a really quick update. The SBDC was not able to join us today, but this was also a program I think that was near and dear to a couple of council members' hearts, the digital literacy program. So our goal is end of summer, beginning of fall to be able to launch these. And essentially what they've been doing is they've been product testing and developing and iterating, which is great for us because it means that we're going to get a really nice, robust product from them. But here, I won't read through it. It's just giving an update kind of on the nuts and bolts of what they're doing. And essentially in end of June is when they expect to have kind of the product finalized so that we can discuss it and launch it in the fall. Then just a quick update. This is, again, we're trying to standardize the format so that you all start to see kind of some similar formats here, and then you can just follow along as the year goes. So this is another format that we're standardizing. So we'll just be filling this in as the year goes on. This is the economic benefit to the city as far as what the ROI is on our investment with the SBDC. So you can see here that the total clients they served from Federal Way is 30 so far, and then also that has resulted in Federal Way the creation of this many new jobs, these jobs that were saved because the business was able to flourish. Business starts or purchase, so this is how many businesses have started or were purchased, and then also loans and grants that were able to be secured based on the help and support and technical assistance that was provided by the SBDC. And I do apologize, I don't remember what this last number is, but we can ask Rich the next time that he's here. And then this is just a breakdown of the client demographics with the SBDC. So again, highlighting kind of some of the nice stories here with the second line here, Black businesses having a rather high percentage, also Hispanics having a good percentage, and then women-owned businesses essentially represented just at the same rate as the male-owned businesses. So some nice diversity there. And then just a couple of slides. These are the standards ones that you all know. I won't go through it because I think you've had time to digest it. But if you do have any questions, please let us know. Again, just standard slides that you see every quarter. Again, if you have questions, let me know. And that's the end of the presentation.
Could you go back to that slide, please?
Of course. Which one? This one?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So new businesses, 344 in quarter one, which is the first 3 months of the year. And then renewals, we had about 1,336 renewals. And these are, again, the top industries that were represented in those.
I think in the financial report this month, it says that business licenses are down.
So numbers are relative. So business licenses, I don't know what, and I would defer to Chase. I don't know what their time period was. And so year on year, we're not, there's also the differentiation between how many are renewed and how many are new. The other thing that we're starting to have conversations with finance about as well is standardizing when we actually pull these numbers, because as some of you who have businesses know, you may get your business renewal notice in January, and then you have a grace period of X number of weeks and months to renew it. And so it's also kind of a lag time of when businesses decide, when are they going to actually pay the bill and renew it. And then the other thing is we also don't know when businesses may decide not to renew, and that's the latest that you'll find out, or I guess the first time you'll find out, is when a business after that year, they haven't renewed their license for a year, and then, we would find out. So it's, the numbers are always going to vary depending on what point in time you decide to pull the numbers.
So if we find out that a business hasn't renewed their license, do you go out and try to find out, does a business still exist, or have they left the city, or do you do?
Yeah, so the answer is unfortunately a little bit more gray and fuzzy. The city doesn't, what we can see, and this again is getting into a lot of detail, but we can see if a business is pending. So, there's different status of a business license after it's been sent out for renewal. Julie actually knows the numbers better than I do, but there's like certain grace period of like 120 days or 90 days for each of the different stages. And then at a certain point, the DOR pulls the plug and says, okay, we assume that they're inactive. And so it's very complicated. And there's no way that you can, I've tried literally for 5 years to figure out if there's a way that you can monitor like every single business. With 4,000 business licenses, there's no way to monitor it. And so we just hear, for example, if there's a restaurant or, a shop that closes, that's pretty obvious, that's when we generally find out.
Thank you.
Yeah, for example.
All right.
Did that answer your
Any
question? Yep.
Yeah, that's it. All right.
Great.
Good.
Okay, that was presentation number 1.
Okay, is that everything for the Economic Development Q1 report?
Yes.
Okay, we're moving on to agenda item G, which is Tourism Enhancement Grant Recommendations 2024, and it is Deputy Carter again. Director, excuse me. Yeah, it happens.
She's in the police department.
Oops. I can't get the little, let's see. Here we go. Okay. So I will run through this briefly. All of the information was detailed in the packet in the staff memo. And these are also presentations, there were applications from 2 long-time, well, 1 shorter time, 1 longer time applicants. So they're all known entities, and the results and the ROI is also known. So the policy question tonight for council is, should the city council, or should actually FEDRAC approve LTAC's recommendations for the 2024 tourism enhancement grants? Again, not to read the whole slides, it's an event that everyone is familiar with, the National Hot Rod Association, NHRA Nationals, which is here in unincorporated King County, a few miles away from us. And this is just a summary of all of the return on investment that we received, which was several $100,000 as opposed to the investment that was made on the actual grant. Then the second application was, again, a long-time event that has been here for many years, from Elite Productions, which is it's a bodybuilding competition, and they have since had a lot more attendees, and they've also had a lot more, since they opened, I guess, the pro class, that has really garnered a lot more attendees and a lot more notoriety for the event. In your packet, you actually have the hotel nights that each one of these events actually garnered. And if you look at hotel nights, the investment, and then also how much publicity that Federal Way received on all of these, it's definitely a very, very strong program. And as I've mentioned many times before, the main goal of economic development this year is to get Federal Way on the map. And so to really increase visibility, to really start telling some great stories about Federal Way, to really make investments in getting the word out on what we have here to offer, and to really start to change perceptions and change the narrative to really reinvigorate the city as we start to redevelop. So the two options in front of FEDERAC tonight is, first one is to forward the proposed TEG grants to council for consent, and the second is do not forward them to consent and provide direction to staff.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So in the past, we were able to see their complete applications. Could I see those before we vote on this at the council meeting? For the Pacific Race Race?
Sure.
Were there any applications that were not accepted?
No, it was only these two applicants.
And in the past, we've also said that we didn't want to continue to provide funding for events that are returning events. Not since
Yeah.
you've been here, but before, when we've talked about lodging tax money. So it was never, I don't believe it was a written policy or anything, but it was something that we felt pretty strongly about. So just saying that I don't know how many times Elite Productions has received money from this.
I don't know any reason that anyone would ever not allow an event that brings in heads and beds and revenue to the city to not apply again.
I believe it was because we wanted to encourage new events to come into the city and to provide funding for new events.
So we have so much money in our fund. We could sponsor many events. I know in other cities that I've worked at, and also in this city, I've proactively invested money to promote. We have it, for example, on our website. We have it year-round. I've actively promoted this grant program, and we can't get, I mean, it's literally, we can't get anyone to apply. So I would strongly discourage not allowing events to take part that have proven that they are garnering heads and beds, which is the point of the program.
So we haven't turned anyone down?
No. Anyone that has qualified. So, I mean, they need to qualify for the program, and it also needs to be decided by the Lodging Tax Committee.
And to qualify, you need to do what?
So you need to fill out the application, you need to provide a whole bunch of documentation, and essentially at the end of the day, the bottom line is it's a replenishable fund, and it's replenishable only by people staying in hotels. So, you know, the kind of core criteria among the whole scorecard that is provided is, does the event bring any heads and beds? So if it doesn't bring any heads and beds, it's kind of like spending money that's not gonna get replaced.
So, how do they prove that they've put these heads in beds? So I remember very specifically last year when we talked about Pacific Raceways, because we all had concerns about that. And I remember you saying that there was no way we could prove that they had actually put heads and beds here. But that you were pretty sure they did, but we couldn't actually prove the number. So how do we, this is your best guess, or this is actually the number of people that they will be putting heads in beds, and we can prove that at the end of their event?
So there's various ways that those numbers are generated. It's not from the city, it's from the event organizers themselves. And so there's multiple ways. They either have contracts with the hotels for blocked rooms. They either do promotions where they're promoting hotels, and there are partnerships with hotels where they can gather the data on where people have stayed through promotions, digital promotions or email promotions. Then there's also, at the events themselves, then they do informal surveys, or they have, places for people to fill out, like, where are you staying or what are you doing? So there's a number of different ways that they gather that information, and then they provide it to us based on what is their estimate, and then what are, the actual, like, those types of numbers from things that they've gathered.
So the hotels will actually tell us that the Pacific Raceways will have 1,400 heads and beds. They will actually give us that information.
So as mentioned, there are different ways that they gather it. And so it's not something that I can't tell you exactly what the breakdown is, but it's different ways that the different event organizers are gathering that data. And so, it's any combination thereof, through conversations with the hotels, through hotel promotions, through blocking the rooms, through special event promotion, so a lot of different ways.
Well, the reason I'm asking, especially for Pacific Raceways, which, I understand it's a great program and they could be doing things later on in Federal Way, which would be awesome, is I've had probably 4 people in the last 2 weeks ask me why we would be funding something that's not even in the city of Federal Way. And when I said, well, we funded it last year, then they asked me even more questions about why we would do that and how we can prove that these folks would drive past Auburn and Kent and come all the way up to Federal Way to stay in a hotel here. So that's why I'm asking, because I'd like to have a better answer to give to folks when.
Absolutely, and I'm happy to talk to yourself and anyone else online, because I'd be happy to give you, more sound bites and information. And please, whenever you have questions like that, please do not hesitate to send them my way, and also, share with me real time. And I'm happy to jump on a call or, send an email or whatever. So really here to support you on that, so you have real-time information. But the short answer is, between Auburn, Kent, and Federal Way, all 3 cities are sponsoring Pacific Raceways. They had roughly 25,000 people attend, and they also can see specifically what the numbers are of, out of the country, out of the state, out of town. And there are less than 2,000 hotel rooms with combined Auburn, Federal Way, and Kent. And so it's, just even if you do that math on the back of an envelope, 25,000 people into less than 2,000 hotel rooms, if they booked every single hotel room, which obviously is also not necessarily going to happen, they are filling up the hotels, as evidenced by the hotels sharing that with us. And the hotels who actually are paying for this lodging tax, they are the ones that are pushing very hard for this to happen. So if the funders are the ones that are pushing the hardest for us to sponsor events like this, then that, I think, is the best indication, without even having any other conversation or data, that the people who are paying for this want this more than anything.
So we had an event this weekend in Federal Way, the Island Bowl, and it was either the 2nd or the 3rd year. It's rugby, and it has grown extremely large over the last year. If you were around Sahali Park on Saturday, there was no parking anywhere. It was amazing to see the growth that they had. And we talked to people from Oregon, asked them, I specifically asked everyone that I talked to that wasn't from Federal Way area where they were staying, and they were staying in hotels. And so I want to be sponsoring those things also as they grow, because that they're bringing in people who haven't been here before.
I had conversations with the organizer, if it's still the same
Sonny?
gentleman, last year. So he was informed about the program. We discussed it in detail. Unfortunately, I can
I'll
provide
send
that
him your way
information.
again.
Yeah, absolutely. I can provide that information, and that's kind of an example of what we're talking about. We proactively are trying to encourage, events to apply. We personally vet all of the applications with the applicants. before they apply to ensure that they, kind of know what are the things that the committee may look for, what are the data points that they might want to provide. So we really are very active and involved in the application process to help applicants succeed as much as possible.
Thank you.
We have council members Asafa Dawson and Dovey with their hands raised.
Okay. Councilmember Dovey?
Oh.
Councilmember Dovey.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, two questions. How much money is reserved for these future programs that may come to us? What's a set aside right now? Because we always used to have money we were building for diving championships and swimming meets and things like that. So what is really available for people to apply for?
So the entire fund for lodging tax is available for people to apply for. So roughly every year, just as a minimum, we are receiving about $200,000 to $300,000 in lodging tax funds. So that's on an annual basis, between $200,000 and $300,000. And then as that money is not spent, that is something that economic development is working on to create an actual tourism program, which again, the hotels who are paying for into this fund, they are strongly pushing for a kind of master tourism plan that will use this fund to essentially finance it. So that is something that they're really, really driving for, because the events are really great. And they do bring in a little punch for the economy, when the events happen. But what the hotels are really driving for is some consistent kind of plan that we can really market the city and have a consistent kind of visibility as to how tourism is doing and how it's increasing. And that is.
Okay, so maybe I asked my question incorrectly. Mike Dinwiddie in the past used to always come in and say, we need $100,000 to get the NCAA swim meet, or it's $80,000 for the diving championship, or whatever it was for the pools. Mm-hmm. Are we still doing that, where we're putting money aside so we could compete for those programs?
Yes, we are. So right now we are negotiating with the Seattle Sports Commission to finalize a contract. We're actually waiting for them to provide us with a contract so we can execute the event next year for the NC2A championships. And then we also work with the Seattle Sports Commission to submit bids whenever there's a bid for our aquatic center. And yes, so I guess the short answer is yes, we're still doing that. And yes, that money still will be used. And we have sufficient funds currently to fund those bids.
Okay, great. And I think last year you said that you got a lot of data from the cell phone users. Somebody did some data mining and found where the cell phones in the hotels were and could track it to the events. Did I misunderstand that, or was that part of your way you figured it out?
You're correct, and unfortunately, the sad news is that is one of the joint grants that Parks and Economic Development applied for that Ariana in the past presentation just mentioned we did not receive. We just found word last week that 75% of the grants that apply, or the applicants that applied for this grant funding, did not receive grant funding because the grant fund was cut by 75%. So it was kind of going to be a sure thing, and then it wasn't. So unfortunately, we will continue to. It was the company was Placer AI, and they have data intelligence that was showing, for example, in the one that I think you're referring to is they were showing who was coming from, where the people were coming from that were going to the Celebration Park 4th of July celebration, and where the people went to after they left the 4th of July celebration.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Asafa Dawson.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to support what Tanya was saying about the 2 awards. Like she said, first, there were only 2 applications that were submitted. And also, all the hoteliers were very supportive of the programs, and they already had reservations for the hotels for these events. So it's already a positive thing. And the question about how do we know that they're coming all the way from, passing Auburn and Kent. First of all, I think we're doing, the other cities are also funding this project, or the But we remember last year, the return on investment was close to 100,000. And correct me, Tanya, if I was wrong, if I'm wrong, but
It's on
I
the
know
screen.
it did put our city on the map. And so I think it's a very good project. And again, we didn't have any other applicants, and those who reviewed the application on LTAC were very supportive of it. So to kind of go back and try to, I'm not opposed to you reviewing the applications, but I also want to make sure that we move forward. Again, because the committee had reviewed it and approved it. And also to, like Tanya said, us deciding not to fund projects repeatedly or on an ongoing basis would really jeopardize some of the opportunities that we have, because the first or second time, it may take a while for people to make reservations in our hotels or even get to know our city. But I think as we continuously fund, as long as we have the funds, of course, I believe that people will start booking hotels here in Federal Way because of other amenities that we have, such as even depending on the time or the season, other things that we have like wild waves, for instance, and or the fact that even if they don't stay in our hotels, or those who stay in our hotels also use other services, or like our restaurants and shopping. So I think it's a good thing. Just wanted to say we did get good reviews, and they came and presented, and the committee asked questions, and those questions were answered. So I really believe we should move forward. But if we have concerns about not funding any programs on a continuous basis or any other thing, I think the council can look at that for future funding opportunities. And I would say let's move forward with this one. So thank you.
Councilmember Assefa-Dawson, if I could just add, I just did some quick math in my head. For our $50,000 investment, if there was 1,000 hotel room nights at $200, that would be $200,000 just for the hotel room nights. In addition to that, we got $41,000 for the television signage viewing, and we also got $30,000 in television value for screenshots. And then we also got over 1 million people on social media that were viewing. We also had a interview from the mayor on Fox News, and then we also had an event at the Performing Arts Center that drew a large crowd for the Cars. So, and then it also enabled the Courtyard Marriott to do a separate private deal with Pacific Raceways. So if we just add up the monetary value and just super conservative with 1,000 room nights, which was way less than what they said, then that would, almost be $300,000 just in money, and then all the additional coverage. And so essentially, if you just look at the finances, $50,000 investment to get, over $300,000 back in return. I think that is and again, the hotels are the ones that are financing this. So if the hotels that are paying for this are very, very strongly in support of this, I would find it, the people that are paying for this want this. So I would find it difficult to disagree with them.
Yeah, and also they were willing to track hotel nights too, during our conversation by asking questions, at the desk, and or giving them packages or what do you call them, little bags, just so people know where to go, and maps and stuff. So there's a lot of collaboration between the hotels and this grant and the Pacific Raceway. And for the Island Bowl, I think it would be great for them to submit an application. The process is really simple and easy, and the interview is not bad at all. So I think for next year, we should encourage them to apply for this fund. Thank you.
All right, I think that's everybody. So I will make a motion. I move to forward the proposed Tourism Enhancement Grant Application Recommendation 2024 to the June 4th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and there's a second. All in favor, vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The motion passed. Thank you very much.
It's just 60%.
We're going to move on to agenda item H, the Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Agreement. And I will actually be excusing myself for a second and handing off the reins to President Coachmore for now.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you very much. Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Agreement, Tanya Carter. Thank you.
It's me again.
Yeah.
This one's really fast. It's the grant that we do every year. So it's a grant that the city has been doing, I don't know how long, and it's a matching grant. So the policy question is, should City Council, FEDRAC and City Council authorize the acceptance of the 2024 Port of Seattle Partnership Agreement? So we did apply for it. We asked for permission. We applied for it. And essentially, to just recap, the two projects that we would fund with this, it's, again, all the financial details are in your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but in the interest of time, I just want to highlight here the two programs that we will do. The first one is the one that we do every year, which is the outreach and survey. And if you recall, we have honed our methodology to the point now that we have over 50% response rate from businesses on the outreach survey, which is unprecedented on surveys. And we use the responses from the surveys. This is something that we're very proud of. We do not just survey businesses just for the heck of it. We take the responses that they provide, and we actually create programs to specifically address what their needs are. So as we presented in, I think, council last meeting, but I may be mistaken on that. I don't remember which meeting it was, but we did present the survey results, and the survey results showed that there were three things that the businesses needed, and we've created those programs. The mobile surveillance trailer program came out of the survey results, as did the commercial affordability program that we are putting together, as did the marketing and promotion that you've heard about today, and from DCI. So we directly are creating programs for the businesses that they request on that survey. And then the next one is, as you have seen, the theme is tourism, marketing, business. We need some content, some photographic content of all of our fantastic assets in the city. So we need to build what we call a media library, and they are assets that the entire city will have access to. This repository is something, again, that we need as a city, but specifically, of course, when we create marketing materials. And so that's the other addition to the program this year, is that we will fund that. And so essentially, there's two options tonight. As mentioned, we already asked for application permission. It's a grant that we do every year. The two options are either to forward the proposed partnership agreement to consent agenda, or to not forward it and give staff direction.
Is there any questions online? All right, seeing we have no questions, I'll make a motion then. Okay. I move to forward the proposed 2024 Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Agreement to the June 4th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
Good evening. All right, next item on the committee business will be item I, AP vouchers for April 17, 2004 to May 16, 2024, and payroll vouchers from April 1st, 2024 to April 30th, 2024.
Good evening, Council Chair McDaniel, Council President Coachmar, other council members. I'm here to present the AP vouchers and payroll vouchers. AP vouchers from 4/17/2024 through 5/16/2024, the amount of $5,559,565.95. Payroll vouchers in the amount of $4,453,322.75. As shown on here, the AP vouchers did increase a little bit from March, primarily due to some one-time expenditures for projects that are ongoing or near completion, including the Federal Way Community Center locker room and pool slide. And then payroll vouchers, excuse me, sorry, moved a little too quickly. Payroll vouchers increased this is, I apologize, let's hide that. Decreased slightly from March into April, primarily due to the quarterly payroll taxes that we pay. And so those just typically go down. So fairly consistent with both of those vouchers. Thank you, Councilmember Honda, for the questions that you sent before the meeting. I think we sent an initial email, and you had some follow-up questions that we haven't been able to get to yet, but we'll follow up after this meeting with some of those
Thank you, I
additional
appreciate you guys when you do that.
Yeah.
I know it takes me a lot of time to go through those vouchers. Takes you less time maybe to get the answers, but thank you so much.
Yeah, glad to help. And that concludes the report.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay, no questions online. In that case, I will jump straight to the recommendation. I move to forward the vouchers to the June 4th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, looks like we're moving on to our last item, item J, monthly financial reports, April 2024.
And I will be fairly brief. We do this every month, and this is not going to be terribly complicated. The questions that we always want to answer are, as the months go by, are the expenditures within budget? Are the revenues sufficient to support the expenditures that we budgeted? And then are the investments that we're doing within policy? As you saw in your packet, based on the results for the first 4 months, the revenues are favorable. The revenues took quite a jump this month, and that's primarily due to property tax receipt because we get 2 large payments twice a year. And the expenditures are also within budget, and that's not a big surprise. Sales tax, I always make sure that we get, let's see if I can get rid of that up there.
May I ask a question before you move on what you just said?
Yes, you
So
certainly can.
on the first page of the report, under General Street Fund Summary, it says that expenditures and transfers out are favorable to YTD budget of 20.56 million by 117K or 0.6%, primarily due to timing of ARPA spending and filling of vacant police officer positions. Does that sentence mean that if we did not have those last 2 things, the ARPA spending and the vacant police officer positions, that it would not be favorable?
I think that's true. The reason that we have favorable variance right now is because of the underspending of ARPA and because of police vacancies. That said, there are quite a few expenditures that we disperse heavily in the first part of the year, insurance premiums being a large part of that. So it's hard to do the 1/12 estimation. So I want to say, yes, you're exactly right, but then there's some other complicated
Okay.
factors.
Thank
But
you.
yes. Those are the 2 primary largest positive variances that we have.
Okay, so as you go through your report, there's another part of the report, and it talks about police vacancies in overtime. And that the police vacancies are paying for the overtime. You probably don't have this information right now, but if I could get and the whole council, a report of how many police officers we have and how many vacant positions we have, I would be interested because it seems to be, covering some of the expenses that the department has. I'd rather have the police officers instead of the extra funding there, but if we could just find out how many police
I'm
officers we
happy to
have.
do that. I talked to Chief Wong. We look at the overtime monthly and we look at the vacancies monthly, and we agree, we'd rather have the police officer positions filled. A safer city would probably be a thriving commerce city. Yes,
you.
we can get you that.
Thanks very much.
Sure. Sales tax revenue, I am a little bit sad to report that we have had another slightly down month. That means the last 3 out of the 4 months have been less than the sales tax was the same month the previous year. Not a lot. We're down 230,000 under the prior year, and that's 5%. And again, if it was up 4%, I'd say that's just inflation. However, we're actually down, so that's still concerning. Not a lot, but we are watching it every single month. Utility tax revenues, all of them combined, continue to be favorable to budget and just a touch under prior year. So we're exceeding budget. That's the good news, and then it's less than it was. That could be timing. Permit fees revenue, another good news, bad news. It's favorable to budget, but it's under prior year, and that's because last year, the first quarter, we had a tremendously high first quarter. So last year, we're just not doing as well as we were last year, but it is exceeding budget. That's the important part. So that we can still feel good about spending the budgeted expenditures. Property taxes, right on track. We get two large chunks in April, one in April, May, and the other in October, November. And we expect this one to get exactly to budget by year end, so we just track it to make sure that we're being vigilant. Real estate excise tax, of course, is the biggest concern. Last year, we compensated for the downturn in revenue by deferring projects. We've been talking to EJ and Desiree, the same thing this year, because it's a restricted revenue, and the projects that it funds can possibly be deferred. That's how we compensate on that one. Lodging tax is slightly unfavorable, but it's over prior year. And the scale, as Tanya Carter mentioned earlier, we have about $300,000 budgeted for the whole entire year. And again, that's restricted primarily for expenditures that fund tourism. Looking at our investments, there are very few surprises, and I don't think there's any surprises. We continue to be favorable to budget. We're a little bit over prior year. Last year was such a big increase. It's going to be a little tough to beat, but we are benefiting from the rates that are still high. We replaced one maturity that had a very low rate with a purchase that is going to earn us 5.1% for quite a while, so that was just an improvement in our overall revenue. Cash continues to be strong. As you can see, the most recent bar actually went up a little bit, and that's because we received such a large remittance of property tax, which is seasonal, which is normal for this time of year. Our investment holdings, there is nothing newsworthy. We want to make sure that we have at least $20 million of liquidity in our state pool, and we have $28 million. Our debt, this continues to be the same exact chart that I've shown since December, and that's because we make interest payments mid-year, but we only make principal payments in December for 3 of our debt issues and one in August. So there's no change there. And on our road to the 25-26 budget, we're just inching closer to the September date when we'll be providing the mayor's budget. Back behind the scenes, staff is working, and we don't have anything close at this point. We're working with all departments to project their expenses and their staff. We'll be having study sessions in September, October. I think there's been some questions. When are we going to be having public study sessions? And you'll be hearing from all departments at those. And I'm not going to belabor our monthly financial report. That's all the news I have. Happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. Several months ago, I asked if we could get I would like a monthly report, but maybe that isn't possible, about Dumas Bay and Knutson Family Theater.
A monthly report?
Knutson Family Theater in Dumas Bay, how many rentals we get down there, overnight stays, and Knutson Family Theater, how often it's been rented out, what, kind of like the PAC report, because it is a theater, our theater, and it would be great to get more information about how well it's doing in the whole Dumas Bay Center.
That's true. We give you a very high-level report on the community center in Dumas Bay and the Performing Arts Center on one page. And we just met with Parks today to go over their budget, and they, because it's just numbers on paper to us in finance, and so they were very helpful in helping us and explaining to us what goes on in real life. Yeah, I'll get with John Hutton and his team. You have asked for that before, and I apologize.
No problem, you're pretty busy. And then my second request is, looking at the utility tax rebate numbers, they're still really low. And I would like to request that we get an ad hoc committee together, which I'd like to be on, and go over the program and what we can do perhaps to increase people applying to use that program. We have it there to help people. I've been told that the $100 maximum that someone might get, it's difficult to put the time into applying for the program for that amount. I don't know why that would be, but that's what I've been told. So I know when I've looked at my utility tax bill, my utility bills, and I look at the tax that I pay, and I know that the $100 came from staff looking at, you know, what they anticipated people would be paying, but I think it's too low. And I think we need to take a really good look at this program and reinvent it before next year. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I think that's something, if you like, if you want to just run it by the mayor, and we can just set that up after we're done with the ad hoc committee for the commissions. Then we'll have a little more time. Yeah.
Councilmember Dovey has his hands raised.
Councilmember Dovey?
Excuse me, I just have a comment. You know, we've talked about this rebate that people don't apply for and we don't give it away. And maybe instead of an ad hoc committee, why don't we come up with a number and it's, you know, whatever it's supposed to be, and donate it to the senior commission so they can do something for the seniors, because they apparently don't want to take the money because nobody applies. I mean, I just think I applaud Susan for wanting to push this, but I just think it's a waste of time and it's too much effort, and maybe there's a better way to do it. Just a comment.
You know, it's not just for seniors anymore, it's for, thank you. It's for anyone in the city who qualifies, so it's not just for seniors anymore.
All right. Well,
It used
I
to
don't know.
be back in the day.
I don't know why, you can't get a horse to drink water if they're not thirsty, and I get it. Everybody's got pressures, but if nobody's willing to take it, maybe we should figure another way to do something with whatever we budgeted that to be.
You know, Jack, I don't think it's that they don't want to, it's that it's confusing. As you get older, they're not very computer literate, they don't know what's available. Maybe there's a lot more issues that a committee could review. And then if they think you're right, we could just do that. But I don't see any problem with having a committee to review some of the issues.
Okay. I do know that the one guy, when the tax people came and talked about property taxes for seniors, my friend, she got, I don't know, almost $5,000 back. So that's low-hanging fruit that we should be teaching people how to get that money back.
Would you send me an email?
Worrying about $50.
Sure. Could you send me an email to that effect?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is Lydia got a hand up? No, okay. Jack, do you have anything else? I'm assuming that's a no. So just a couple quick questions. First one.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. First one I have is PAC. I'm looking at the numbers on the PAC. I've been waiting for a report. It's May, still haven't seen a single report for the year or last year, so the end of last year. So I'm going to request again publicly that someone send me the PAC's updated financials so I can review it. I see that we do have some better sales, but their expenses are still pretty high, so I'd like to dig a little deeper on that one. Then my other question is a quick one. Budget was something that was brought up on Saturday when we had to meet the school board and the city council. And one of the questions was about those study sessions. So the study sessions you mentioned, are those for council or are those public study sessions, the ones that will be coming up for the budget?
Both. Primarily for council, but it'll be a public meeting.
Okay. And then can you pop back to your the REIT numbers?
Sure can. I thought I could do it quickly.
It's all good.
Why is there an echo?
The projections that we used earlier today when we were discussing the bond, was it using the estimated REIT numbers that we were looking at for calculations, wasn't it?
The estimate that we were using earlier had a forecast going forward into 25 and 26, based on this actual, yes.
Okay, so when the actuals are gonna, and right now we are under by 606,000?
Correct.
And last year we were underneath, REIT was behind its revenue numbers by how much? Do you remember how much last year's was? We missed.
How much lower it was from prior year, I
Yeah.
don't remember.
I know, I
At
want
this
to say
point,
a million
yeah.
plus.
No, it's a lot.
Yeah, is it, well,
More than we
Well,
wanted.
well, my big concern is
Yep.
the bond that we're talking about putting on there, the biggest chunks coming from this guy right here, and that's a major concern. One of the things I would love to hear or love to see is what is the city's plans other than just pushing off? Do we have any other, like, I know when I work with small businesses and we start seeing numbers start to cut back, we put emergency plans in play just to have them for when that does happen. Does the city do anything like that? Where there is, or do we just not move jobs and projects that have been approved forward for funding purposes?
Well, when we're forecasting real estate excise tax, we're looking at the underlying real estate market. The underlying assessed values have been pretty stable. In fact, most years they've increased. They came down a little bit. So we have to consider, do we think that the real estate market will recover when when mortgages come back down? We think that's a year out, maybe two. I mean, the Federal Reserve is tough to predict, but they've been talking about making a rate cut this year, and now they're pushing it off to next year. They're still talking about rate cuts next year. So how many years would it take for the real estate sector, for the pace of transactions to recover? I don't think that's 3, 4, 5 years. I just think that's much more short-term.
But the loss that we had last year and the losses that we have this year from the expected revenue stream is going to affect the projects that are currently in line. And if it does come back up, we still have that gap that we had for a couple of years that is going to push a bunch of jobs 5, 10 years out, it sounds like, or it's going to push them out pretty far, isn't it?
I don't know, it should only be just bumping them 1 or 2.
1 or 2.
But, yeah.
Okay. All right, just, like I said, if there's not a game plan, I'd love to know or have an email sent over to me of what the city does when those kind of things pop up. 'Cause I'd rather have a
Yes.
game plan
Yeah,
beforehand.
I share the REIT remittance every month with EJ in Parks and John Hutton, I'm sorry, EJ in Public Works and John Hutton in Parks, because their projects depend on it. And then we need to start thinking, course correcting as early as we think it might be a problem.
Okay. Well, I'll wait till next finance, and we'll see what the 6 months, or I guess.
That's what we say every
6
month,
months.
but I will bring it to you every single month.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions, then I will make a motion. Nope, don't see anything. I move to forward the April 2024 monthly financial report to the June 4th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Yay.
Yay. Yay. So with the yays having it, I believe that is the last item on the official business. Thank you very much. All right, do we have any other comments or questions?
I was just going to say congratulations on a very long meeting with lots of information. You don't have the record, but you're pretty close.
Next meeting will be June 25th.
I'll put that one in. All right, in that
Thank you
case.
for your patience.
I appreciate it too.
Thanks.
Just for the record, next meeting will be June 25th, 2024 at 5 PM. With that, I will adjourn the FedRAC. Thank you.
Thank you.